Good morning, everyone. I think we waited enough for people who wish to join our webinar today about the Swiss PEFC scheme. My name is Hubert Inheiser. I'm a technical officer, and it's my pleasure to welcome you all on behalf of PEFC International on the webinar today. Please be advised that our meeting or this webinar will be recorded, and after the webinar, it will be made available on the PEFC website. Our program today is the following. First, I will deliver a short introduction about PEFC International, and then we will continue with the presentation on the Swiss program for the endorsement of forest certification scheme delivered by Swiss PEFC. And at the end of the webinar, there will be a possibility for participants to ask questions regarding the scheme. So let us proceed with the introduction. PEFC stands for Program for the Endorsement of Forest Certification Systems. We are an alliance of independent national forest certification systems under the umbrella of PEFC International. We provide national forest certification systems based on PEFC sustainability benchmark. It's a voluntary mechanism promoting sustainable forest management through independent third-party certification. We are proud that PEFC is the world's largest forest certification system, and we provide 3/4 of the world's certified sustainably managed wood. On this slide, you see PEFC's global coverage. As of today, we have 55 national members with 48 endorsed certification schemes covering 320 million hectares of forests. And about our scheme today, the Swiss PEFC is a long member of the PEFC family. This revision of the system, which we'll be hear about more today, was adopted on 28th of September 2020. And the Swiss PEFC submitted this revised system for assessment also at the third quarter of last year. The PEFC assessment is carried out by an independent assessor, yet to be appointed, because the call for proposals for this assessment will expire by end of this week. And this webinar is part of the assessment process, which also includes a 60 days public consultation, which is available on the PEFC website. The 60 days already started with 8th of February, but please feel free to submit your comments or views on the system until 9th of April. That's the deadline when we will be able to accommodate comments on the public consultation platform. All these comments which will be submitted to PEFC International during this public consultation will be considered by the assessor in the assessment report. And with this very small introduction, I would like to hand over to the Swiss PEFC and ask Dimitra Vlasco-Badra to introduce us to the Swiss PEFC scheme. Dimitra, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Hubert. So I'm gonna share my screen now. Yeah, you should see it now. So welcome to my presentation of the Swiss scheme and the re-endorsement process that took place from 2 years ago to last year. Oops, let me technical problem. Let me introduce myself and the team. I am Dimitra. I started working at PEFC Switzerland in summer 2019, when we also started the whole re-endorsement process. And I organized an event there as a first job. So you will hear about that later. Olin is our CEO and Isabel is a market researcher. We all only work part-time. We are a pretty small unit, let's say, but we can always count on the support of PEFC Germany too, who have been working with us for quite a while. So today, first I'm going to introduce the Swiss forestry sector a little bit and the role of PEFC there. Then I'm going to talk about the re-endorsement and introduce the system to you, how it works. So let's see, the Swiss forest sector. Yeah, we have a total forest area of around 1.3 million hectares. 6% are reserves. Each year we have 10 million cubic meter growing more or less, and approximately 5 million cubic meters are harvested. Switzerland also imports quite some wood, but this is not for this presentation. The forest property is distributed on around 2/3 is owned by public owners, such as the federation, cantons, and then municipalities and civic corporations. And the rest is owned by privates, around 30%. So there are a lot of small forest areas owned by private people. The industry, we have 700 forest organizations, around 6,000 employees in forestries, and the harvest is mostly softwood. 2/3 are softwood, 1/3 is hardwood, and as you see, around 1/3 goes into fuel directly. So there is quite a wood fuel industry or use, and the rest is logwood and others. The PEFC certified area is around 17% of the Swiss forest area. You can see on this map that we created the areas of certified forests and also the companies. And I don't know if you see my mouse, but we have a lot of, a lot of certification in the French part of Switzerland and here around Zurich, where we are located too. Currently, we have 59 chain of custody certificates, of which 12 are multi-site certificates. This chain of custody is focused on trading, sawmills, construction, and furniture, and pulp and paper. We assume that the focus on the French part, that we have a lot of certification there, is because the traders can gain market access to France, where certificates are very popular in the wood trading industry. Then also the chain of custody gains can represent their commitment for sustainability and sustainable forest management, and our federal law, let's say, favors construction with the use of certified products. So this may be another reason for chain of custody certification. PEFC Switzerland has association and board members, such as the Forstunternehmer Schweiz, it's the forestry contractors, wood industry Switzerland, Lignum, the umbrella organization for the whole wood industry, and Wald Schweiz, the Association of Forest Owners. So let's come to the re-endorsement process. Oops. Here you can see a little overview of the 4th revision of the Swiss PEFC scheme. I just screenshotted the timeline from our report, development report. So we had a PFC forum where we introduced the re-endorsement process, followed by the gap analysis that I'm going to show you a little bit. We developed reports for the forest management standards, had a working group meeting, which resulted in another report draft, and then the public consultation. And we had to also work on some other standards, not only the forest management standards, but I'm going to focus on this one later. If you want, you can answer a question, ask me about the others too. And as you said, Hubert, then we applied for assessment in September last year. So the start of the revision was with a nice event for the 20th anniversary of PEFC, that we were lucky we could join a lot of things together. We invited all our stakeholders. On the right, you can see our stakeholder mapping, or a little screenshot from there. It is organized, in associations of forest owners, other associations, environmental NGOs, scientific and institutional stakeholders, such as the Federal Office for Environment, the Forest Department, and the Swiss Federal Institute for Forest, Snow and Landscape Research, for example. This mapping has been in place for years, and we constantly update it when we gain new stakeholders, or if someone is interested in our system, we just add them to our list. So at this event, we had all these people around in October 2019, and there was a poll to, and also a call beforehand to submit any requirements for adaptations on the forest management standard. But there were no inputs, so it seemed that everyone is happy. So then we moved on with the gap analysis for the standards, as we had to bring the forest management standard to in line with the international PEFC benchmark 1003/2018. So what we saw was that there were some points that were open still. The general proceeding was the following. We compared the benchmark with the standard as it was in 2019, and discovered the gaps. And the gap is when it is not included in the standard or not included in the Swiss law or forestry law. So one interesting point was 6343, the minimal wages topic. We have no legal minimum wage defined in Switzerland. So shall we include it or not? Then a fertilizer topic, if they are used, they shall be applied in controlled manner. We have a regulation on fertilizers, but we weren't sure if this fulfills the benchmark. And then there was also a point with infrastructure and the protection of soil, which was not included in the standard. So this was to be discussed in the working group. And the last point was the chapter improvement, which was included in a document that we already had, principles of the certification system, but it was not included in the forest management standard. So in the first draft, we just copied the chapter for improvement from these principles of the certification standard and put it in the forest management standard and deleted it from the other to not be redundant. And this draft went to the working group. So we had the draft and we invited all our stakeholders to participate in the working group. We made an online announcement and invited stakeholders. At the working group, Olin Bartlome, our CEO, was present, Isabel, Rahel, who was with PEFC and also with Waldschweiz, representative of forest owners. Then we had a further balanced representation with Stefanie Weindler, who works with Artus Group Certification Management and also is a representative for forest owners. Peter Schmieder wrote the PEFC Switzerland standards some years ago. I was not there yet to be more informed, but he was very essential for this work. And Gilbert Gubler, who is also a representative for forest owners and the harvesters, so a representation of the industry. The results, we don't have them here, were that, I just go back, this improvement chapter was accepted. And here, the minimal wages were not included in the standards because in Switzerland we already have a really fair and transparent wage system, and the aim was not to further complicate the people's lives. The regulation on fertilizers, Peter Schmieder get the good input that they are already forbidden. Also wood ashes, which was a point of discussion, are forbidden in the forest. So it was also not included in our new standard as it is already included in the law. And the infrastructure part was included with a little addition to an existing chapter. So then we announced again, we sent around our draft, we published what happened on our website, and we created a feedback page on pefc.ch revision where people could add a comment. Also, comments that had already come in, which was one, were added to this page with our answer in order to be transparent and have all the questions publicly available, and also the answers, and to also have a little example of how you could, what you could contribute. There was no feedback that came in during the public consultation, so we assumed that our stakeholders agree with the proceedings and results. So from these processes, we learned that everything takes some time. It was quite a work to translate all the information, as we have a French part, an Italian part, which we didn't translate, but we also didn't have any inquiries from there. And we had a rather limited participation from the stakeholders, which we assume is that there is trust in the system, our system, as well as the Swiss legislation. So people are not very concerned, apparently, about changes. And now I want to briefly introduce our system to you. I'm gonna add this. We have 13 documents in PEFC Switzerland. 5 normative documents, which is the group certification of individual enterprises, the forest management standard, chain of custody, and the trademark rules. From the normative documents, we have been adopting the international benchmark forever. No, sorry. Oh, excuse me. The chain of custody we adopted from the benchmark, and the other 3 documents are also in line with the standard, of course. We worked, as I said, on the standard for forest management during this re-endorsement process, and also the requirements for group certification were quite some work, because we added some new structural topics, such as the groups, the group representation, the group organization. All these definitions were not as clear in the last version, and the definitions of the duties of each of these groups were also defined. Then we have the mandatory guidelines, the principles of the certification system that I already mentioned, the requirement for certification bodies, for forest management, and for chain of custody. And then we have the procedures for dispute settlement, standard revision procedures, and the notification of certification bodies and issuance of logo usage licenses. And additionally, there are other documents, terms of definition and definitions, the fees, and the statutes. During the last year, the terms and definitions were not changed. The fee document was changed to clarify a little bit and to have a better overview. And the statutes, we included a line stating that we are a non-profit organization. This is mostly to be able to apply for cost reductions in, for example, Microsoft Office, or when we use a survey tool, you can get better conditions when you're a non-profit organization. And how it works for the forest owners. First of all, they get in contact with us usually, and then and also for chain of custody, and they are asked to read the standards and define the required procedures and measures for the forest management, for example, as defined in our standards. It is stated that there is a strict documentation of, for example, for the forest owners, the tree distribution. Is there any tree that needs to be protected. You have an inventory and also a management plan that you have to write. And then they need to find an assessor for the endorsement of their certification. We have a list of assessors online where they can choose whoever suits them best. The assessors visit them to control the compliance with the standards, and the owner gets the certificate. And then, as defined in the standards, which is in the forest management standard, as well as in the group standard and the chain of custody, there are annual monitorings, internal monitorings, and external monitorings from the assessors. In case that the assessors find irregularities, they inform the certificate holders about it, and as defined in the standards, there are different proceedings. If it is a major non-conformity, they can reassess the organization and then either withdraw the certificate or not. But yeah, I have not seen such a situation yet here in Switzerland. And that's already it. I happily answer your questions if you're interested in something in a more detail. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dimitra, for this detailed and clear presentation about the Swiss PEFC scheme.
Thank you.
And now there's time for questions. I would like to ask everyone to focus on clarification questions, because as I mentioned, the full scheme documentation is available for public consultation. You are free to download and analyze it to have in-depth knowledge about certain areas you are interested in. But of course, we are here on this webinar today to ask your questions if you have any. So please use the raise hand reaction button if you wish to ask a question. In case not, I also felt myself, Dimitra, that your presentation was very clear. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending the webinar. Special thanks goes to Dimitra for preparing for today's webinar and delivering the presentation of the Swiss scheme. And I still would like to encourage all the participants to take a look at the public consultation website and get familiar with the Swiss scheme. And with this, thank you very much for the attendance, and I wish you a good day.
Thank you. Thank you, Hubert.
Bye.